Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Vandy back on the Card Fight Vanguard deck profile. So if you guys enjoyed it, like, subscribe, Mr. Story. This time we are covering one of the first, or not one of the first of the 3 Nirvana decks I have to cover for set 13, and that is Nirvana Cross, aka Nirvana, but focused specifically on crossover chess. I say specifically on crossover chess because there's the one that focuses on all overdresses and crossover dresses, and then there's the one that focuses specifically on Straw Arena. So let's go and get started, shall we, and see what we got. First of today, we have our starter in Trickstar. It's pretty much the starter for all of them, and there's a reason for each of them, and we'll go over each of the reasons. So first with grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 5k base, continues rear guard. It cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. All around, it's pretty solid, you know. Basically, it's untargetable, and having it in the ride deck means you can soul blast it out for cost and then call it back via Nirvana skill. Now, back when, like, set 1 or, like, set 2 even, it was really prominent to run Trickstar as your starter to get more access to it quicker. Apparently, as I've been told recently, is more often than not you just pick the actual starter like Surprise Egg or Sunrise Egg, etc. to get the free draw. Here's the reason why I don't go back to that. And this is not because I hate Surprise Egg, because quite literally, I wanted to run Surprise Egg as my starter for this deck for so long, and except for the first time I tried it, everything went horribly wrong. So here's the reason why I run Trickstar as my starter. For some reason, having one less Trickstar in the deck increases my chance of seeing all of the other ones tenfold. I kid you not. That first game I played with Nirvana Cross, it didn't really make much of a difference. I saw the same amount of Trickstars I do now. But after that, I rarely saw my Trickstar. Second I changed my starter to Trickstar, I see all of them immediately. Like, I don't understand why it's like that. It just is. So one of Trickstar is my starter. I would rather see my Trickstars consistently than get a 50-50 draw that literally depends on who goes first. So, yeah, one of them in the ride deck. Then we have our trigger, Sort of Over Trigger, and Dragon Deity King of Resurgence Drag Veda. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. You may only have one Over Trigger in your deck. When revealed as a trigger with a card, draw a card, choose one views, it gets plus 1 million for the turn, and then you get to draw a card, and then if you're voted during your attack, activate its additional effect, which you can choose one of your vanguards and stand it. All around pretty solid because no matter what, if you damage check or drive check, you get 1 million in draw. And if you drove check it, you get to stand the Vanguard. And with the Vanguard that already allows for multi-attack, who doesn't have a once per turn on that clause, when you stand them and you attack again, you get more attacks out of it. All around, Drag Veda is a very solid over, and I just like pulling it. It's amazing. You can run Ball Nut from a multi-attack, but I want to suggest it because that means you probably have to call over your crossover dresses. You can run Asphoria to rebound your crossover dresses, but I prefer Drag Veda for the, if I pull it while my Vanguard's attacking, I get more attacks, so one of Drag Veda. Then we have our normal triggers. We run 7 crits in total, 3 Blaze Maiden Zone, grades of boost, 50k shield, 5k power. This can really be any crit you want. I just chose Zone because I like her, and I don't really like the Blaze Monk critical trigger too much in terms of arts, even though I think he has a sword. I just like Zone more, so 3 of Zone, and then 4 Burning Flail Dragon. Grade 0 boost, 15k shield, 4k power, critical trigger, auto react, the amount of this unit boosted. Put the soul, choose one of you, it gets 2k for the turn. Okay, the 2k doesn't really do much because most of your units hit magic numbers already. The only time this would matter is if you're boosting like a grade 2 Village Virena with a grade 1 for 23 and your opponent's at grade 2. Then you sub this to soul, so it's at 25, so it then hits a magic number. But I mean, otherwise that 2k doesn't do much, but it's nice for soul fodder because your soul kind of competes between 2 big boys, one of them being Bar, the other one being Braum, and then with our new prayer dragons, it kind of adds to the soul competition. So for Burning Flail, it's nice to have to help increase the soul to kind of even out all of the soul blasters. Then we have 4 copies of Flare Veil Dragon, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base, continuous guard circle. If your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, it gets 5k shield, which is nice to have. You know, it helps increase hand, and when you're running a lot of different crossover dresses, you're going to want to be able to see as many of them as physically possible, because for some reason, Ryu doesn't search them. I never understood why the grade 2 Ryu searches the prayer dragons instead of searching the crossover dresses, but it is what it is, or we never got a crossover dress searcher in the first place outside of Gabriel Mirror, or the one grade 2 that no one fucking runs. But, you know, being able to increase hand is great, and also being a 10k shield for late game situations is also very helpful. For Flail Veil, weird thing is I run more draws in my other crossover dress, or on my other 2 Nirvana decks, except for some reason this one has the most consistent in pulling the things I need. Then again, to be fair, this deck is a little bit more versatile compared to the other 2 for very specific reasons, so 4 Flail Veil. And finally, we have 4 of our healed Blaze Maiden Rioni, grades of boost, 15k shield, 5k power, standard heal, and Espada. You can really make this any heal you want. I don't really like the effect heals though, because I feel like they're too situational, being 10k shields most of the time, only 25k shields in very specific situations. I'd rather have a consistent 15 than the fluctuating 10 to 25, but you can really make this any heal you want. Hell, you can make it Blaze Maiden Rona. In fact, in my over cross-dress deck, long story. There I have both of them at 2 of. So for Rioni, she's nice, and I really only run her in this specific build because she happens to come out the same time Nirvana Jiva did. However, she is very useful, and I have relied on her enough times to where I think I can afford to run her as a 4 of and not have any like non-biased things against this a 4 of. Then we move on to our like normal units. We have 3 more trick stars. We have the 1 of in the ride deck. We have the 3 of in the main deck. That's all I can pretty much say about it. Then move on to our grade 1s. We run 2 copies of Striker Equipped Dragon Strigalio. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, 8k base, and this is where the difference starts for the deck profile. I say this because not because all the decks are going to have different things because up to the or same things up to this point, because they do actually have different triggers, like I said. But the reason why this is different is because in the video that will go up on Friday about this deck, I actively say there, and I'm saying it now too. Actually, wait, no, these decks. Oh yeah, no, the video comes up tomorrow. Anyways, this deck was built after that video, because I didn't expect to record that video back like that same day, so I didn't have time to add this edit in. So yeah, anyways, Strigalio is in here now when he wasn't before. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto and placed on rear guard circle from the hand. If you have Vanguard Nirvana, its card name, ditch a hand card, search after 1 trick star or unit in the overdress ability, reveal it, put it to hand, shuffle your deck, and then auto becomes an original dress. Counter boss 1, choose a trick star from your drop zone, call it to rear guard. All around pretty solid because it's a ditch 1 to add a trick star. This deck has no overdress abilities, and that will become more clear as we get further into it. So being able to add a trick star, then use Nirvana skill to ditch that trick star, call that trick star right back, and call a prayer dragon on top of that is all pretty solid. And then obviously when you cross overdress it, you can then counter boss 1, which this deck kind of has a CB problem, kind of doesn't. It really just depends on what your definition of CB problem is. I say that for a reason as well. You can then call back another trick star and then cross overdress it. I remember I used to not like Strigalio, and then I've literally used that ability so often now just to like combo into either more rear guards or more cross-dressed rear guards. So 2 of Strigalio, very solid. He's searchable via Rayu. He is sadly not searchable by the other prayer dragon that searches the deck, but he is searchable by the other one that searches the deck, and just does a really good job, so 2 of. Then we have 2 copies of Blazing Heavenly Break Equipped Dragon Kalmadak. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, continues to all this card's auto dresses get auto rear guard. When it attacks, choose your opponent's Vanguard, and it gets plus 2k to on the battle for each grade of that unit. And overdresses that unit with this card is the original dress of. So, you know, being able to basically make anything a better beat stick is nice to have, because you know when it swings into a grade 3 Vanguard, it gets plus 6k guaranteed. It's basically a better version of all those crappy generic cards we got, because it was required to get plus 2k for every 2 grades. This is for every grade, meaning if you swing this into Griffle Gila, so be it, it gets numbers, and like it does it all for free. All around, Kalmadak's a very solid grade 1. It just does its job well. Like it's beat stick and it does it for free. 2 of. And he's also really cool with like the Blazing Hammer. And we have 2 copies of Blazing Heavenly / Equipped Dragon Drawas. So grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Okay, in this specific deck, like this specific version of this deck, this card is not that good, and you already kind of saw the reason why, because yeah, all the prayer dragons are 2 ofs. Anyways, auto when placed on rear guard circle. If you have a Vanguard of Nirvana, its card name, counterbots 1, retire another rear guard to search your deck or drop zone for up to a total of 2 cards with Blazing Heavenly and their different card names from each other in this unit, and call them to rear guard circle as rest. And if you search the deck, you shuffle, and if you retire to rear guard crossover to state, draw a card. Okay, I realized 2 things about this. First up, it has to be a different name from itself. I think I've called like itself once or twice, but then here's the important part that I'm now realizing: deck or drop, which means you can call them from drop. So that one problem I was just talking about, how this thing is not that good because you're gonna have less copies of these in deck, suddenly doesn't fucking matter because they can be called from drop. But cool. Being able to kill a rear guard and then get 2 more and possibly even replace one of them just by calling it is great. Even if they come as rest, because that makes you cross overdress targets. And if you did kill something in the cross overdress state, which isn't ideal, but if you have a better cross overdress in hand, you can then get a draw out of it. All around pretty solid. It is searchable via Rayu, and because it can be placed from anywhere for that skill, granted it can't call itself, but you can basically use Nirvana with this and get free rear guard. So 2 of Drawas. Just very good grade 1. It helps spawn the board when you need it. And then we have 4 copies of our PG and Spark Rejector Dragon. Grade 1 boost, 0 sources, K base, continues Sentinel. You may have only 4 summons in deck, and I'll just put on the guard circle. Choose one of your units that cannot be hit till in battle. And if your hand is 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand's guard. It's standard PG, nothing special about it. Basically, that means if this and only one other card is in your hand, you place it on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game. Spam down this as much as possible. And then when your opponent counterattacks you, you can just hold on to the PG, give them the middle finger, and you're good. Because honestly, if you play this deck the way I do, and if you want a good like representation of that, even though it is slightly different from the one that I'm about to say, go check out tomorrow's fight video, because that's pretty much how I normally play this deck. And yeah, you will see how useful that PG will come in, especially in the early game. What I consider early game is first grade 3 turn, because yeah, you'll understand quickly what I mean by that if you watch the video. 4 Sparkle Rejector Dragon, just good PG. You can make it Twin Blocker because they have the same skill, but I prefer Sparkle Rejector to come out at the same time as Nirvana Haiva did. I say Haiva, not Jiva. Again, long story. Now we move on to our last grade one of in the red deck, none in the main deck, of Heart Pounding Blaze Maiden Reno. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base, auto and Rotopon by snuggling Blaze Maiden Ray. You search after one Trickstar, call it to rear guard and shuffle your deck, and continues to rear guard during turn. If you have a Prayer Dragon on the same column master, she gets 5k power. I really wish that was a Vanguard skill. You have no idea how broken one of my Nirvana decks would be if that was a Vanguard skill, because my god, the numbers would be insane. But, you know, being a basic on Rotopon, you get a free Trickstar is great, and, you know, if you do find a way to call her to rear guard, she's a 13k booster, or swinger for that matter. All around, very solid. She's a nice one of in the ride deck. You don't really want her in the main deck because you're either focused on crossover dressing or prayer dragons, or maybe even regular overdresses like arcs. So Reno's a nice one of in the ride deck, sadly on the main deck, but A, she's cute and she does have the value of the ride deck call. Then move on to our grade 2s. Run 3 copies of Blazing Heavenly Render Equipped Dragon. Our Power J. Grade 2 is a 5k shield, 10k base. This is my favorite out of the new ones, except for this one. Like, these two are a hard fight to the death. Actually, to be honest with you, I like these 3. I just don't like the last one. Anyways, auto when placed on rear guard from other than from deck. So you can't call it from his skill if you're calling from deck, but you can call it from Nirvana skill, or again, you can still call from this thing skill as long as you're calling it from drop. By soul blasting one and ditching any hand card, search after one Prayer Dragon, call it to rear guard and shuffle your deck. So here's what I see happening when I try this crap, okay? You, go to grade 3, you search this from Ryu's skill, then you ditch this via Nirvana skill, you call it, or maybe you don't ditch this, you ditch something else, and then you, actually no, you don't ditch in general, you just call this right out, Soul Blast, doesn't matter what you discard, probably Prayer Dragon or Trickstar, search it, or Soul Blast out of Trickstar and discard a Prayer Dragon, search your deck for this thing, call it, counterblast, kill this, but call a second copy of it, and call this probably, and then past that, what you do is you then use Nirvana skill, ditch a card, call back that Trickstar, call back this thing, if you still have an open rear guard, Soul Blast one, get one more Prayer Dragon, boom, you got a free Strava Arena. 3 of this thing automatically off that back alone, like, it's a free Prayer Dragon. It works during the battle phase. If you find a way to call it during the battle phase, all around pretty solid. And then auto when it becomes an original address, draw a card and choose one of those cards' outer addresses. And to end of turn, to end of your opponent's next turn, it cannot be chosen by your opponent's card effects. So, cool, freebie draw, and it gives the opponent a middle finger because now they can't touch your crossover dresses unless they either do non-targeting effects that board wipe, like Strava Arena, or they just straight up ram into it. So 3 of a Power J, just very solid grade 2. It gets you Prayer Dragon rear guards. It gets you target for Nirvana. And not to mention that, it doesn't even have to be on Nirvana for this to proc off. Meaning you can just grade 2 rush your opponent consistently. And it protects the crossover dress it goes into and gets a free draw to replace itself. This is a 3 of, and the only reason it's a 3 of is just so that there's more options for Prayer Dragons to go into Strava Arena at max for. So 3 of. Then we move on to our grade 2s, or not grade 2s, our Talisman crossover dresses. First up, we have 2 copies of Jeweled Sword equipped God of Irina. Grade 2 NSF 5k shield, 10k base. I'm just going to only say this one time because all of them share the same text, except for one of them. Crossover dress, 1 of each Trickstar and a Prayer Dragon. You may call it by stacking it on all the specified units instead of normal calling it to rear guard. So unlike Overdress where you have to place it on wherever the Trickstar is, so if Trickstar is in back center, the Overdress goes on back center. In this case, if Trickstar is in back center and Prayer Dragon is in top left, you can put this on any circle, not just any of those 2. So you can put it to top right if you wanted to, as long as both cards move under it. And then his continuous ability is rear guard. If it's in the crossover state, he gets plus 10k power, and during the battle that he attacked, when your opponent will call cards from a guard circle, they must call 2 more at the same time after one of both players' turns. So on both player turns, he's a 20k beat stick, and not to mention the fact when he swings, your opponent's mandatorily forced to drop 2, and when you have a Vanguard that can restand him once, and if you pull this over trigger over here twice, yeah, Garo of Irene is pretty good for attacking. Granted, he's more of an endgame card, but he is nice to throw down in the early game, basically force your opponent to 4 or 5. So 2 of Garo of Irina. Then we have 2 copies of Sturdy Wall Equipped Vils of Irina, the best defensive Irina by a long shot. I hate saying that because Urger's like the overdressed defensive version of Vils, but Vils kind of does the job better defensively. Grade 2 stuff, 5k shield, 10k base, crossover dress. I'm not going to say the text again. Auto when placed on rear guard in the crossover dress state, choose a card with crossover dress ability from your drop zone other than himself and put it to hand. So it can bounce back Garo, Mirrors, Straw, Bar, and I don't know what I was supposed to say, Vils, Brahm, or any other crossover dress state they make as long as it's not himself. and then continues rear guard. If it's in the crossover to a state, he cannot be chosen by opponent's card effects. He goes to 5k power and 10k shield active on both players' turns. So all around pretty solid. He's a 15k base with a 15k shield that cannot be targeted, which is amazing. That means your opponent either has to swing into it to get rid of it, or they just bring a big enough number to where you're forced to intercept with it. Either way, though, Vils Virina is a very solid grade 2. I like his skill a lot. He's very nice for the defense, and the fact that he can bounce back another crossover just procs off well if you have like stuff that you send from drop zone either via ride deck, this thing, or even this thing skill. So, or maybe even him, honestly, if you did kill something just to call stuff and get a free draw out of it. So, 2 of Vils, very solid grade 2. I like his skill a lot. Then we have 2 copies of Mirror's Reflection equipped, Mirror's Virina. So, this is my least favorite of the Virinas. You know, I say this because it used to be Bar, and then Bar really quickly, after one specific video, turned my opinion around with a 180. So now by default, Mirrors is my least favorite, and that's like saying something considering I think most people think Mirrors is the best because he is a CC, but in my opinion, the deck never needed CC. Again, this is coming from a guy that had to play with only CB as their only form of resource outside of discards for an entire year straight. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but when you're playing the exact same 2 decks for a year straight, and both of them are only allowed to use CB and hand cards as cost, you get really used to CB to the point where unless the deck actively will use up 5 CB consistently every turn, there's no such thing as a CB problem. If you don't believe me, try that for yourself and you will see how dead serious I am about this. Anyways, great turn set 5k shield, 10k base, auto when placed on rear guard by the crossover just state. Show to 2 cards with Virina and their card names and put them to as units, this unit's original addresses. All around pretty solid. It can be any 2 Virinas, it can be itself, it can be Vils, it can be Garo, it can be Braum, etc. And it can be the same name Virinas, it doesn't have to be different name Virinas, so all around pretty solid. And then auto rear guard, when he attacks into anything, if it's in the crossover just state, he gets plus 10k power for that battle, so 20k swing, which is nice. And then by putting one of its original addresses with Virina's card name into the drop zone, draw a card to counter charge 1. So close to being good. So close to being good. Here's why I say so close to being good. I really wish it didn't say it had to be a Virina. I really wish it was just send any of its original dresses. Hell, even if they want to, they could just have Talisman or like any of its original dresses that is not Trickstar, just so it's not super abusable. But I mean, hey, it's a 2-time used counter charge or solo charge that you can then just kill for Vils and then bring it right back with Vils. So 2 of Mirrors Virina. All around pretty solid. 20k swing regardless, then possible free draw or counter charge, and not to mention the fact that it just does everything it does for free. So 2 of. Then we have our last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Snuggling, Blaze Maiden, Rayu. Grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base. I've heard a lot of people like Rayu's art, or like this version of Rayu's art. I like her more than I like her other art, but like, I have apparently heard people like Rayu more than they like Reno, and my response to that is, how high are half of you? Like, I think Reno looks a lot cooler than Rayu here, no offense to Rayu. Anyways, auto and wrote upon by Chakramati, Phoenix, Dragon, Nirvana. Hey! Yes, I know it's pronounced Jiva. I choose to call it Heva for a reason. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck, search for one Prayer Dragon from one of them, reveal it, put it to hand, and shuffle your deck. So cool. Free Prayer Dragon. You hit Searcher off this, you hit other Searcher off of this, you hit other Searcher off of this, you hit Beat Stick off of this. Pretty much there's a 1 out of 4 chance you're not hitting a Searcher off that if you see a Prayer Dragon at all. So all around pretty solid, and then continues rear guard. She shares the same skill as Reno, where she gets with 5k if there's another Prayer Dragon in her column. Again, not bad for like a beat stick, and if that was a Vanguard skill, it would be really good in this deck, but it's a rear guard skill, sadly, and this deck is, again, focused on crossover Justice and Prayer Dragons, but she is nice, so one of in the right deck, none in the main deck, because you don't need that beat stick skill, but top 7 search is pretty nice. Then we move on to our grade 3s. First up, we run 2 copies of what used to be my least favorite of the crossover dresses, and then Mirrors came out and then changed my opinion on that, and that is Flaring Cannon Equip, Baru Virina. So, grade 3, Chandra, Persona, 13k base, act rear guard. If it's in the crossover dress state, soul blast any 2 cards to choose an opponent's rear guard and murder it. I hate that. That is part of the reason why I hated him. The fact that Braum was better, because while yes, Bar, if you built a dedicated deck around it, could just burn your opponent's entire board in one go, the thing is, it was double the cost to do half of what Braum did. Yes, Braum had to hit, but A, Braum had on hit pressure, and it killed a column for half the cost, while Bar has to Soul Blast 2 to kill 1. So there was kind of an issue there, but then here was the real reason why I hated him. Auto Rear Guard, when he attacks in the crossover dress state into a Vanguard, he gives 2k power until in the battle for each of your opponent's open rear guard circles. My other reason why Braum was better. Again, I liked Braum the most, but like my other reason he was better. Braum, no matter what, would have more numbers than his guarantee because it'd be a 33k base. But then if your opponent's Vanguard, so not then if your opponent's Vanguard, then if your opponent has 1 or less rear guards, counter blast 1 to end a battle he loses a drive and he performs drive checks. That ability I did not hate. That's what people called out on, like that was going to be his problem, the fact that it was going to eat up CB with Nirvana. That ability I did not hate. It was everything else about it that I hated. And the thing was, I never used that ability because I was more focused on trying to stand Braum and use my CB for everything else that mattered to me. Except for some reason, after one match that was on camera, it actually just went up today, Tuesday, October 3rd at 1:39 p.m. Okay, it didn't go up then, but that's the time I'm recording this, where it was Nirvana versus Orpheus. And I remember in that match, I said, I don't use Bar that often, and it's kind of disappointing. After that match, I have used Bar in almost every single game that he is in my deck. And every single time I use that ability to get triple drive. And every single time I pull off at least one crit. It's so dumb how after I said it one time I never get to pull off his ability, I suddenly always draw him. And I always find a perfect timing to just play him. 2 of Bar Virina. He's slowly become one of my favorite ones just because he kills rear guards and he gets drive checks, and this deck can actually pull off the cost consistently. And Mirrors does help with that. I just hate Mirrors more than I hate Bar. That's not to say I don't care for Mirrors. That just means I just don't like him. So 2 of Bar Virina. Just very solid grade 3. And then, of course, we have 2 of my personal favorite. Ability to equip Braum Virina, though, of course, it's because he's my favorite. Doesn't mean he gets away with the 2 of copies. If one's at 2 copies, everyone's at 2 copy. Grade 3 generic persona, 13k base. Continues rear guard during your turn if he's in the crossover state, free +10. So automatically, and again, this is the reason I used to hate on Bar, the fact that at most Bar would be a 23k swing in D, this inherently just by being in the crossover just states a 23k base, and then if your opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, it's an additional 10k, so this thing's 33k base, meaning to block this thing, your opponent has to at least use 25k shield each time. And then auto rear guard once per turn, when this unit attack hits a Vanguard, if it's in the crossover just state, Soul Blast one, choosing to call him and murder it. So, cool. Non-rear guard targeting removal, because while yes, it does pick something, it picks specifically the column. So unless the unit says its column can't be picked, it's picking that column and it's still murdering everything in it because it's not picking the rear guards. So cool. Grants a hard once per turn, but if you have 2 of them on board, that's 2 33k B6s on hit pressure. 2 of Braum Virina, just good numbers, good pressure. What's not to like about it? Then we have 2 copies of our new boy, and that is Blazing Holy Sword Equip Stalo Virina. So, this one is not as prominent as it is in this deck compared to, obviously, its build that's focused on it, which works stupidly well, even though it has no right to. Anyways, grade 3 generic persona, 13k base. Crossover Dress 8, this is the only one I'm going to read its effect off of. 1 Trickstar and 2 or more Prayer Dragons with different card names. So, yeah, the version that I used in that fight, I didn't have copies of Strigalio, meaning I couldn't pull off this thing's full effect. But now that I do have Strigalio, you can pull off its full effect. But again, they have to be different names. You can't use like 2 Strigalios and 1 Trickstar. They got to be different. Thankfully, with those 3 Prayer Dragons, they can most likely be different. So he has 2 abilities. First one continues from a rear guard circle. This does stack, by the way, so if you found a way to bring him out twice, granted you can't bring him out at full power twice unless you're playing in premium, but this will stack. During your turn, if he's in the crossover just state, he gets plus 10k power, and then all of your Vanguards with Nirvana and their card names get triple drive and 10,000 power on top of that. So the one issue that I heard so many people complaining about when Nirvana Jiva first came out, when it fought against Mahar, and that was the fact that it didn't have triple drive, because that was the main argument I heard, that it didn't have triple drive. Lo and behold, and not only that, it gets 10k, and this thing gets 10k. The only thing that's not getting 10k is possibly the other thing, and if it's in the crossover state, it's also probably getting numbers as well. But here's the important thing to note about this. Because that stacks, even though obviously triple drive won't stack, that means your Vanguard, if you have 2 of these on board, is a 33k beat stick. Just saying. 33k beat stick without Personas. Persona Ride's 43k. That's pressure right there. And there's other ability, the dumb one, the one that I feel like they could have waited to reveal in the anime, but I guess set priorities has its matters. Auto rear guard. When it in the crossover dress state stands by your Vanguard's ability. Doesn't matter if it's a Nirvana. So if they gave us another unit that could stand by abilities, whether it was a Nirvana or not, if it was a Vanguard stand ability, this would proc it off, and your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, CB1, stand all of your Prayer Dragons and Talisman rear guards. So all of these, all of them, except for him and the ride deck, all of them stand off this. And then, if you have 5 or more original dresses, remove every single marker on your opponent's rear guard circles and kill all their rear guards. Non-targeting rear guard murder, but also triple drive and a 23k base on both himself and the Vanguard. And regardless if you have the full things or not, as long as you put him in the crossover state, which just requires 3 cards, he's a board restand. This is a 2 of. Even in this deck where you can't pull that effect off, this specific part of the effect off consistently, you get him out at all in the crossover just state with any other of these guys, and suddenly your opponent's in big-ass danger. 2 of Strava Arena. Giant Beat Stick, you're crazy not to at least try to run him. Then we have a last card in the deck, 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck. I got rid of an extra copy for this Prayer Dragon, obviously, or technically it was for Stragalio, so I could, have more Prayer Dragons to proc off Straw skill. But that is Chakabati, Phoenix Dragon, Nirvana. Jiva! It is Nirvana Jiva, but I don't really like calling it Jiva because I feel like Jiva sounds like a spear. Like when you say Jiva, it feels like you're stabbing something compared to Haeva, where like it feels divine and like the wings of it are kind of opening up. That's how I see it, at least, and that's why I don't call it Jiva. Well, there's the other reason too, but that reason's personal. But it is what it is. Anyways, grade 3 turn persona 13k base. Active Vanguard Circle once per turn. Ditch your hand, card with 1 Trickstar and Prayer Dragon from your drop zone. Call into Rearguard Circle. So ditch either of the 2. Call the one you ditched and the Trickster, and whatever the other one is, from drop zone to Rearguard Circle, then immediately cross over just them. And then auto Vanguard, not a hard once per turn, so if you pull the over, it restands, and it can do it again. When this unit attacks into anything, CB1, choose one of your Rearguards, cross over to stand it. Your preferred target, because board stand. Otherwise, Braum, followed by Bar, depending on the situation, and at the same level, Garo, and then past that, Vills and Mirrors in the same spot, because honestly, you don't really, this one is really more defensive than offensive, so you don't want to stand unless you have to. And then Mirrors is kind of like more, let's just say resource handy than like offensiveness handy. And again, being stuck with CB for only a year straight, you get used to CB to the point where unless it's consistently blasting out 5 in a turn, you ain't going to have a problem with CB. But which this deck can do, by the way, by barring into this. But you're not going to do that consistently, I promise you. Either way, though, being able to get rear guards for very simple cost is nice. And again, being able to stand something just for 1 CB is pretty nice as well. So 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck. If you're worried about being able to play Persona Rides, triple drive, and I kid you not, this deck will go down to 15 deck cards by second grade 3 turn. If you think I'm joking, straight up watch every single match I've played with any of the Nirvana decks. Watch them closely and watch as my hand goes over the deck, and you will see consistently by the time I get to second grade 3 turn, I have 15 deck cards left. I'm not kidding you. They does consistently do this. So take that as you will. And without further ado, that's it for the deck. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry that this was a long one. Trust me, it's only going to get longer because the other one has a lot more cards to go over. But this deck is very fun to play. It has all of these different units you can go into, which means you have a variety of pressure, even if most of it's just retiring rear guards. You have some good consistency gainers. You got some good finishers. You got some good attackers. You just got a lot of all-around really good cards, and they all work really well, and they support Nirvana to the best, and they've got us some really good Prayer Dragons recently that just do their job so well. So without further ado, I'm going to end here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, do follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.